While the entire school was buzzing with excitement for the reading and spelling contest, Aaliyah was deep in her own world, mentally preparing for the most important event of the day, lunch. Honestly, spelling words and reading sentences couldn't hold a candle to the thrill of sinking her teeth into a warm slice of pizza. But then, Miss Thompson, her teacher with a sixth sense for spotting daydreamers, decided it was time to yank Aaliyah back to reality. She called her up to the podium as punishment for her enthusiastic lack of attention. With every student's eyes locked on her, the big question remained, will Aaliyah rise to the occasion, or will she crash and burn in front of an audience? Stay tuned. Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. Aaliyah was definitely not feeling it today. The whole school was buzzing with excitement for the annual reading and spelling contest, but she was over it. The only thing that had her even remotely interested was the thought of how long it would take until it was time for lunch. Her head was resting on her hand, and she stared at the rows of kids standing at attention, all lined up and ready to spell out words like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and whatever other nonsense Ms. Thompson thought was impressive. The spelling and reading competition had officially kicked off, and one by one, students nervously approached the front of the room to face their turn. They were asked to read a word aloud and then spell it correctly, simple enough, in theory, but the pressure was enough to make even the most confident students squirm. Ms. Thompson, the teacher with the glasses that seemed to have a mind of their own, always slipping down her nose and requiring constant adjustment, kept a watchful eye on her students. She scanned the room, taking note of each nervous fidget and awkward glance. But her attention soon landed on Aaliyah, who appeared to be in another world entirely. While the rest of the class was fully engaged, eagerly waiting for their moment in the spotlight, Aaliyah seemed utterly uninterested. She wasn't even looking at the podium, her gaze wandering aimlessly as if the competition were a distant thought. Miss Thompson raised an eyebrow, her keen teacher's instincts kicking in. It was clear as day, Aaliyah's mind was somewhere else, probably far, far away from the alphabet. "Aaliyah?" Miss Thompson called, her voice cutting through the hum of the room. Aaliyah glanced up, pretending she hadn't heard her name. She couldn't possibly be talking to me. She ducked her head back down. Maybe Miss Thompson would forget. But no such luck. "Aaliyah, would you like to come up and participate?" Miss Thompson's voice was now sharp, as if she were daring the second grader to refuse. The other kids snickered. Aaliyah's eyes widened. She wasn't really in the mood for this, not at all. But here she was, the center of attention, walking toward the front like a reluctant contestant on a game show. When she got up there, she could feel the eyes of the whole room on her. Great, now everyone was waiting for her to embarrass herself. What did Miss Thompson have in mind, anyway? Aaliyah had been checking out the competition, and it didn't look like any of them were particularly good at spelling either. Miss Thompson was probably going to ask her something ridiculously hard, just to put her in the spotlight. "All right, Aaliyah," Miss Thompson said, tapping the chalkboard with her pointer stick. "Let's see how well you do." She smirked, and Aaliyah could swear that Miss Thompson was really enjoying this. Aaliyah glanced up at the board. The first word Miss Thompson wrote was entrepreneur. The entire room went silent. Aaliyah stared at the word. Okay, that's just mean. She could already hear the laughter starting to bubble up from the other kids. "Come on, Aaliyah," Miss Thompson pressed. "Go ahead, read it out loud. Can you even say it, let alone spell it?" Aaliyah rolled her eyes. "You asked for it." Miss Thompson pressed.
Entrepreneur,
she said without hesitation, her voice clear and confident. There was a beat of stunned silence. Then, the gasps began. The kids in the audience, older students too, stared in disbelief. Aaliyah had just said it perfectly, perfectly. Miss Thompson's smile faltered. "Aaliyah. I'm not sure that's right." "Are you sure?" Aaliyah smirked, knowing exactly what was coming next.
"Sure. I'm sure. I can spell it too. You know."
With that, she calmly spelled it out.
ENTREPRENEUR.
There was a collective gasp from the crowd. Even the teachers, who had been standing off to the side, exchanged glances. They couldn't believe it. Some of them even muttered things like, "Did she just spell that word right?" Ms. Thompson's face was turning redder than her chalkboard. She wasn't going to let this slide, though. She cleared her throat and straightened her posture. All right, Aaliyah, good job. But I'm sure there's no way you can handle the next set of words. The other students, especially the older ones, looked at each other nervously. What is Ms. Thompson doing? One of them whispered. Ms. Thompson turned to the board and wrote the next word, onomatopoeia. The crowd gasped again. Aaliyah was already standing there, grinning, ready for this. She said with a wink.
Onomatopoeia.
Then she spelled it flawlessly.
ONOMATOPOEIA.
The room erupted in applause. Aaliyah was on fire. The other kids were now looking at each other, whispering about how they could barely even pronounce that word, let alone spell it. Ms. Thompson was starting to sweat. Okay, fine, she said, trying to hold on to her composure. But I've got more. She wrote out a string of words, one by one, thinking she had Aaliyah cornered. But each time, Aaliyah didn't flinch. Aaliyah didn't hesitate. Each word was like a well-rehearsed routine. She read them aloud, spelling them without missing a beat.
Exhilarating. EXHILARATING. Precarious. PRECARIOUS. Conscientious. CONSCIENTIOUS. Aesthetic. AESTHETIC. Incomprehensible. INCOMPREHENSIBLE. Eccentric. ECCENTRIC.
And last but definitely not least.
Psoriasis. PSORIAS.
Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. By the time she finished the list, the entire room was clapping. Aaliyah was grinning from ear to ear. Ms. Thompson? She was standing there, completely stunned, as if she had seen a ghost. The kids in the room, even the older ones, started laughing and cheering. I can't even spell half of those words, one of them shouted. Ms. Thompson, completely defeated, slumped in her chair. She muttered something about getting lucky, but the truth was clear, Aaliyah had just outperformed her entire class, including the older students. As the applause died down, one of the teachers leaned over to Aaliyah and asked, "What's your secret? How do you know all these words?" Aaliyah smiled shyly, her cheeks pink with embarrassment and pride.
Well, my dad challenges me to read every day. He's my tutor and he makes me read things that are hard. He says it'll help me get smarter. And I guess it worked.
Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. Ms. Thompson was nowhere to be found. She had slipped out of the hall, her head buried in shame, probably wondering how she'd gotten it so wrong. As the competition came to an end, Aaliyah was crowned the reading and spelling champion. The whole day turned into one big celebration of her surprising skills. From that moment on, Aaliyah became a role model for other students. Her friends started asking her for reading tips. Even the older kids were impressed. A day that could have been embarrassing for Aaliyah turned out to be the best day of her life. She proved to everyone, and to herself, that when you believe in your abilities, you can do more than you think. And from that day forward, Ms. Thompson might have learned an important lesson too: never underestimate a second grader, especially one named Aaliyah. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to help our channel grow.